welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And it is the end of March, and it's the end of Women's History Month.
Boo-hoo.
In the world, for some reason, even though it should be Women's History Month all year.
I agree.
Although thanks to universities, I think it is more now than it used to be.
Yeah, it's a little bit more front and center.
Yeah, exactly. But we wanted to close out this month by having a little bit of a chat about, I guess, female characters. Particularly female characters that I believe and we believe were very mistreated. And the way that female characters are often portrayed, particularly through the male gaze in literature, and the effect that I think that had on, like, classic literature.
And also, like, how it still influences
stories
today,
100%.
but also how it continues to influence even how women write some characters.
Yes. No, it does, for sure, because of, you know, at a certain point people want to be published, and so they're going to try to write what they can as much as possible. So, yeah, it's kind of a tough one to get into. But actually, before we do, God, we haven't done this in a while. Shireen, are you reading anything right now?
You know what? So I went to my bookshelf and ignored my huge to-be-read pile.
Everybody, I feel like a lot of people listening to this can relate to that so much. You know, like when you finish a book, and sometimes you have a little bit of a book depression after, where, like, you have trouble, like, you know, getting around to reading something else. Yeah. And then when you do, you're like, okay, and you look at the, I don't know, 75 odd books that you haven't read, and all of the bookcases shoved everywhere throughout your entire house. And you're like, I need to go to the bookstore, or I need to, like, download something on my Kindle. Like,
I know. I'm so bad with this. I have, like, at least 5 books that I bought last summer that have been staring at me on my bookshelf like, bitch, are you gonna actually read us, or, like, what? So I went over to my bookshelf and I pulled off a book that I haven't read since high school. So I think I bought this one in high school. I don't think it was a big name. I don't think it was ever even discovered by anybody other than me.
No.
It was called Rancor, and it's basically Twilight again.
Oh.
But it's like, I think the dude is a werewolf, so I'm only like a couple of chapters in at this point, and I'm trying to remember this story. I don't remember it at all, but there's very much, like, this, like, werewolf-y vibe.
It's got a Twilight-y vibe, like, to it.
Vampire-y thing happening in the background. So, yep, definitely a copy-paste of Twilight. But aside from that, I just finished reading a book called 6 Years by Harlan Coben.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we were, at the time that we're recording this, we were on vacation a few weeks ago.
Because we don't get enough of each other.
No, I know. We travel together, too. Anyway, we were on vacation a couple of weeks ago. We took a trip, which was very fun.
A trip.
And Shireen was bringing beach-type reads because that's what we were doing. So Shireen brought beach-type reads, and she brought 6 Years by Harlan Coben with her. This I remember because you were reading it while we were away.
Yeah, and it's not really my typical book that I would read. I really enjoyed it. I think I'm going to read more by Harlan Coben.
Did you finish it?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really good. It's about this guy, he's the main character. He fell in love with someone 6 years ago. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he gets invited to her wedding. Like, I don't know, they met, fell in love, and then, like, 3 months later, she's like, I'm marrying this other dude. Which was really strange. And she's like, never talk to me again. So he, like, goes about his life. How road. Super depressed that he doesn't have this woman in his life anymore. And then he sees the obituary of her husband.
Oh, right.
And he's like, WTF. And then so it's like this whole, like, wild goose chase of, like, what happened. He can't find her. It's really good. I think Netflix should just make a series out of it. Because they've done that with a bunch of Harlan Coben.
3 or 4 Harlan Coben properties at this point.
Safe.
The Stranger.
I think there was another one.
There was another one. Oh, fuck. What was it called?
It's not called Bodyguard or anything.
It was called Don't Something... Oh, fuck. Oh, that's going to bother me so much. It was the one about a woman who was working as an exotic dancer and, like, saw a murder or whatever and completely changed her name and her life and everything, and now I can't remember the name of it.
Stay Close.
Stay Close. That's it. Yes, that one. Yeah, so that's it. So, I you know what? They're, like, on a train. If they want to make another one, this could be the next one that they do.
Yeah, they've got, like, a whole bunch of them. They got The Woods, The Innocent, Hold Tight.
I don't know any of these.
And Gone for Good.
Huh.
I didn't know any of these.
Wow.
Hold on. 6 Years was made into a movie.
Was it actually? Oh my god, we're discovering so much.
Oh my god. Hang on a second. Please hold, everybody. I have to go check this. They've got a whole bunch of stuff. What is this? I got so much to watch.
Oh, they're on Netflix?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I've seen The Stranger Safe and Stay Close. There's Hold Tight, The Innocent, The Woods, and Gone for Good. But I think that 6 Years was made into a movie. 6 Years was totally made into a movie. 2015.
2015.
And it's on Netflix.
That was a while ago.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if this is the same thing.
No, this looks like a different thing.
No, definitely not the same thing. Never mind.
Okay. Okay, confirmation, never mind. 6 Years has not been made into a movie. It's just got the same name. It's fine.
They definitely need to do that. Oh, in 2020 they announced that David Ayer is going to be directing
a
Netflix thriller.
Okay, so they're doing a lot more of them, obviously.
Yes.
I think, maybe they've just secured the rights to all of Carlin Cogan's work, and now they're just slowly but surely churning them out. Like, once a year we get one.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Wow. I'm gonna have to edit a lot of that out.
Yeah, it's okay. Anyway.
Anyway, what about you, Megan? What's on your nightstand?
So I was actually, I had been finishing a couple of other books that I had, sort of, randomly around that I had, the ones that you've got, less than a third left. So I had kind of gotten through that, and so I had been reading a book on vacation that I haven't gotten back to yet. Yeah, this one right here that's sitting next to us on the desk, but it's called The Hunger. It's written by an author named Alma Katsu, who, the two of her books that I have so far anyway, very much seem to delve into, historical fiction kind of thing. And The Hunger basically is a fictionalized retelling of what befell, potentially, according to this book, the Donner Party, who were a large party of, a wagon party, basically, back in the 40s, who were moving across the United States to California, because that was, where everything was starting to develop and happening and stuff, and people were prospecting over there, and it was becoming a whole thing of move to the West, move to California, it's the new place to be. So there's this whole big group of people who I want to say left from either Illinois or Indiana, and were traveling, and think of, at that time you would have been traveling by wagon, and there were a lot of people, several families were doing this with and trying to keep supplies up and things like that. Anyway, the actual Donner Party, no one's fully sure of exactly what happened. Whether it was due to poor planning, whether it was due to unforeseen circumstances as far as the route they were meant to take that they could not take in the end. But unfortunately, a large portion of these people died on the way.
Oh, wow.
And really gnarly kinds of things. It seems that toward the end of this, certain members of the party resorted to cannibalism to be able to keep...
that does not sound like a book I would read.
To stay alive. But anyway, that is what actually happened. But this, I think, so far, at least what my understanding is that the book posits, an idea of, a darker entity that might have something or have had something to do with, what happened to them. But that's why it's historical fiction, right? Because you're taking something that happened, turning it into your own idea of something. I know the other book of hers that I have, which I haven't read yet, is called The Deep, and it has to do with the Titanic, so I think it'll be much in the same kind of vein that way. I will say it's very slow moving in the sense of it's very much we're very much establishing the people in the party, which I'm sure will come into play later, but so far things have happened, but it's been in a very quiet sort of way. It's very well written, but it's one of those where I'm okay, I'm kind of waiting for more to occur, but at the same time I'm not not enjoying myself reading it. So I'm just hoping that it kind of spins things around a little bit and we can get into more of the horror of it.
The horror.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what's going on with us. But what's going on with female characters being mistreated in fiction is what we're going to talk about right now. Right now.
And what do you mean by mistreated specifically?
Well, okay, so I think you can look at it in different ways. I think that you can look at it of okay, so a female character is mistreated by other characters in a novel, in a work of fiction, and I think you can also look at it as being mistreated by the author and the way
not doing justice to the woman.
Yeah, not doing justice to the character, choosing certain fates for them, which are just like, you're like, you read something, you're like, what the fuck?
And you're just like, really?
What the fuck was that?
Really?
Yeah, and like, or this character being simply written off as crazy.
Yeah.
God knows, especially older stories, boy, do they love to have a woman who's just crazy when something's happening.
They used to love sending us away to have our crazy spasms.
To have our crazy. Yeah. Oh my God, yeah, go get some sea air, basically, and it just, oh God, it's just ridiculous. But I mean, like, okay, like, I think if you look at examples, like, right off the bat, you can go back to, like, Shakespeare, for instance, because you can look at, like, Ophelia in Hamlet, and Amelia in Othello, and Desdemona as well. But basically, a lot of the female characters. Sometimes these things were written by women. Like, I'm not going to say that they were just written by men necessarily, but if you look, like, a lot of the much, much older stories that were written by men, there's so many of these characters who, like, you read it, and you're like, oh, or you see the play performed, for instance, and you're like, oh, wow. And then later you're kind of like, why did everybody treat her like that?
I mean, it's just funny because you're kind of like, why is her insanity like a plot device?
Oh, Ophelia's is so used as a plot device.
All the time. It just kind of like is used to like advance the story.
Oh, she goes crazy. She drowns herself in the lake. And you're like, what's happening?
What? Like, can we focus on this woman's trauma for a minute here? But like, no, we're just going to move on past that.
All these people are being like murdered around her and stuff. And her fiance or whatever the fuck he is at that point is going absolutely batshit crazy. And then tells her to go to a nunnery. I don't even remember why that comes up in conversation, but get thee to a nunnery. That's from Hamlet. And you're like, why is she you're the one who killed somebody.
Ah, yes, but it's clearly the woman who's lost her mind here.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though he's the one like seeing ghosts and shit, but whatever. But that's fine. Hamlet's allowed.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like, something like Othello, obviously, poor Desdemona has no idea what's going on for the entirety of the story.
Oh my God. Like, she actually does nothing.
No.
Nothing. But the whole story is crafted around the fact that she's a woman.
Yes.
And they're just using her womanhood as, like, a mode of conflict between them. Like, it's just, like, a whole thing. And she's kind of like, I have no idea what's going on.
She has no idea what's going on. And it's like, talk about a classic example of, like, the innocent in a story who really, like, has no knowledge of why things are happening the way that they're happening. And and it's just like, you roll your eyes at, like, for instance, like, why is Othello so easily fucking persuaded into thinking that she's, like, having an affair?
Well, again, because society says that's what women do.
Yeah, and it's just like, you like, now I find, like, when I was younger and I read it, I didn't think about it as much, but now when I have, I'm like, oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah, it's really anger-inducing.
Yes, it's very, very, very annoying, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I do think that those are some really good, like, classic, like, big examples of them. Okay, if you look at something, this is a good example of one of somebody who's written by a female author, for instance. So in Jane Eyre, which was written by Charlotte Bronte, Bertha Mason is the character of Mr. Rochester, had a wife previously, and she, again, apparently had a mental breakdown at some point, and apparently his response to that was not to get her medical help, it was to lock her in the attic. And like, Jane learns all of this when she's like working for Mr. Rochester, and for some reason by the end of the novel has still fallen in love with him, and I have questions.
That was written by a woman.
Yes, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, that's a good example of one where you're like, wow. Ooh, another good example. I'm looking at stuff a little bit, but another good example is in Pride and Prejudice, which everybody fucking loves so much, of the Bennet sisters, is Lydia. Why is Lydia, who's like 15 or 16 or something, why, like, and is silly and has flights of fancy with, like, getting married to someone handsome, why is she stuck with shitty Mr. Wickham at the end, and she has to marry him and be with him forever and probably be miserable in, like, the next 5 years?
Jane Austen did her dirty in that story.
It was not cool, man.
But then again, it's kind of like, I guess you could look at it as a representation of what happened to a lot of women.
Yeah.
You know, like, they had dreams of marrying someone really handsome and rich who would take them away and give them the best life ever, and then they get kind of, you know, saddled with some crusty old piece of shit.
Yeah, well, he was like, what? He's like, what, in his mid-20s, and he marries, like, a 15-year-old girl, and does it only to, like, fuck with everybody else, too. Like, it's all, like, a fuck you to, like, Elizabeth and Darcy and everything as well.
Yeah, I hate that. I really hate these stories where women are just being used for, like, because they're women.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's true. A lot of people, see, I'm looking at this, too, a lot of people have argued, potentially, that, Miss Havisham in Great Expectations might be one of those kinds of characters too, where like she's very much considered like a villain in the story, where she's like, oh, you know, she's just trying to like hurt whatever Pip or whatever her name is and like make her unhappy, make her miserable, but this woman was like jilted at the altar and stuff, and we just kind of skip over that, and you're like, but okay.
And like, again, when society said that that's all you have to live for as a woman is to get married and have babies, and you're jilted at the altar, like, how are you supposed to recover from that?
Yeah. What's her name? Tess of the D'Urbervilles, I think, is also like a really good example of that. You know, she's sexually assaulted, she gets pregnant, has a baby, and then by the end of the story, she's executed for murdering her rapist. And you're like,
what? Like, what? Yeah, that definitely is a mistreatment of a woman right there.
I think that's, like, probably one of the best examples that you could have.
I mean, but there's so many sad stories like that. Like, look at, in Les Miserables.
Oh, everybody.
What's her name?
Crikey.
What's her name?
No, not Cosette.
Yeah. No, Cosette is the daughter.
Yeah, the mum.
The mum who wasn't she a prostitute?
She has to work she does work as a sex worker and everything, and she still gets it, like, winds up in prison later. It's miserable.
Gets pregnant.
It's horrible.
She winds up in prison. She dies of, like, a sexually transmitted disease.
Yes, yeah.
Like, it's just like, what?
I know. No, it's wild, because you're like, what did she do? What? Oh, of course she's lesser than, because she does sex work, basically, when she has to do that too.
Yeah, I really hate that that's still an attitude today, though, side note.
Very, very annoying, because yes,
very
it still
annoying.
happens. I need to look that up really quickly, because it's gonna bother me.
What, Cosette's mom's name was?
Yeah, and somebody's gonna be yelling at us too.
You idiots, why bring it up if you didn't look it up?
Fantine.
Yes,
that's it, exactly. So, yeah, like, it's a really depressing, I want to say miserable story, really, for, like, a lot of people involved, but it's true, like, her character is just, ugh.
And, like, again, like, I know what Victor Hugo was doing. He was demonstrating, like, all the sad stories.
Oh, yes, and all the mistreatment of, like, people.
Of people in general. So he wasn't doing that to her on purpose. Like, he was demonstrating that this is a really tragic story.
Yes.
But I think that it's important to note that happened frequently back then and still happens now, you know, to women. It's really tragic.
It is. Because I think that that's it. If you look back at a lot of these stories, and even like you're saying, like now as well, it still happens. So many of these stories, it's basically you get one or the other. You get the crazy, depressed, miserable female character, or you get the sex object.
Yep.
And that's it. You either get, you know, you get like your Wuthering Heights, your Catherine, basically, like you're miserable, everybody's miserable by the end, everybody dies, or you get your Lolita.
Oh, that was a whole thing.
Yeah. Which is which is, you get one or the other. Well, that's it. It's also, if you think about it, even in 40s and 50s stories, which very often were, sort of the like that crux of like the film noir era, like a lot of those pulpy sort of novels, you had your male lead, because of course you did, and you had your nice girl character or your wife, and you had your femme fatale, and she was always the one who would get the guy, at least at first. He either had to wind up with her, in which case his end would be tragic, because God forbid we wind up with a woman who's confident in her sexuality,
right? Or
she would die, and he would realize how much better he had it with the nice, sweet, prim, and proper one, and go back to that one.
It's all like a commentary, right? It's just this bigger commentary, like. And I've said this before, fast forward, we went through that phase And then fast forward to, and I'll say it again, when Stephanie Meyer wrote Twilight. And suddenly, you've now got your main character who is, once again, pathetic.
Oh my goodness. But like to an
just
extent.
Lives for this man.
For the male character that she's drawn to. It's
and
true.
Like her whole personality then becomes who he is.
Yes.
And their love story.
And her love for him specifically.
And her love for him. And she can't even walk in a fucking straight line without falling over.
Oh my God.
Like, she's that pathetic. Like,
it drives me crazy.
It's this damsel in distress portrayal. It's like, we've come full circle back to this.
I would like to know, I would love to be aware of, like, the male perspective on this. I swear I'm going to ask my fiance later. Of a male perspective on this when it comes to these types of female characters. Is this cute? Is this kind of clumsy, silly, I literally can't even open a jar by myself? Is that cute for you guys? Like, is that something that you like? Is your hero complex so embedded within you that you really like it when a girl can't fucking even walk properly without falling over?
That's accurate. I think that that's what some of these female authors think. That's what a man wants.
Like, they read these old stories and they're like, oh, this is definitely still the norm now.
And, like, I just think that it's really difficult that they found so much success with these characters. So, like, there was Twilight and then there was 50 Shades of Grey. And, like, side note, 50 Shades of Grey was just Twilight fan fiction.
It was, and we know. I think everybody knows that, really. But it's true that, like, if you wanted an potentially even more insipid, irritating character than Bella, like, oh boy, did you get it with what's-her-face, Anastasia.
Yeah.
Because also, I find on top of the stupidities of, like, I'm clumsy, oh, I've never been with a guy before, and I don't understand how sex works at all, like, all that, like, bullshit that comes along with it, which, like, we all know that's garbage. Everybody knows what the internet is, and everybody knows what sex is before they're in their 20s. It's true. Before, like, even if you ignore all of that, simply I think if you take all of those elements and then, you know, you take them away from Bella, a high school student, and you put them on, like, a 23-year-old girl, you're like, I can't take you seriously as a human being.
Oh, no, and that's what Anastasia is.
Yes.
Like, you're just like, okay, you're just beyond, like, sad at this point. She's absurd.
She's a grown-ass woman graduating college, and she's like, I don't know how anything in life works. Oh, I'm so innocent. Like, shut the fuck up. Come on.
And, like, I get it. Like, they do this to, like, showcase how much this man, like, can save them and, like, can, like, make their life better. And, like, I'm sure there's an audience out there who likes to read this and likes to fantasize about having this person who comes in and saves you as, like, this damsel in distress. But it really irritates me in their characters because, to your point, it's like they don't have a brain in their head.
No.
And they're just waiting for this man to come and save them. And I've heard from a lot of people, I've read from in a lot of sources that there's this opinion that by I don't even know how many books it is, one of the books, that Anastasia starts, like, being stronger and pushing back on Christian.
When? I would like to know.
I'm like, yeah, but you see, the biggest problem with all of these stories is that there are so many red flags by the man. And the end message is that the woman can save him from his terrible attitude with her sexuality.
Because they stay together.
I know.
At the end as well. That was like, this is so funny, but that's like actually something that I weirdly was surprised about with that last 365 Days fucking movie that came out, is that she actually is like, I don't know if I'm going to stay with this one, like the first guy.
There's too many red flags, and I was like, whoa.
I was like really surprised to see that, like beyond shocked. I feel like it's probably not going to go in the direction that I would kind of like it to, but I was still like, when we watched it, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I would just love it if some of these would end with the woman being on her own.
I know.
And being like, you know what, I don't need that shit in my life. Because we don't, you know.
No, God. And you watch this stuff and you're like, God, that seems exhausting.
And on the flip side, I find that now when men are writing these female characters like this, and then inevitably, like, there's always, like, you know, those sexy scenes in the book.
Yeah.
The things that they write are just so ridiculous. Yeah. Like, you know, her boobs bounced boobily or something.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's like ridiculous. Every time, if there's like a romantic element to a story, no problem. But every time a man who identifies as male writes a full-on romance novel, I'm like, nah, man, I'm not going to read that.
Sometimes I get a real good kick out of it. Like Nicholas Sparks, I do like reading his stories, and I'm just like, what do you think like women are though?
But that's what's happening with like these fucking Gabriel's Inferno bullshit things that we keep coming back to as well, that we're like watching and stuff. Is that again written by my understanding is a male author who's remained anonymous. I don't blame you, sir.
It could be a woman. Hasn't there been speculation that it's actually a woman?
People aren't sure, so I wouldn't be surprised. But this person has said that they identify as male, so I don't know. It's hard to say. Anyway, but again, see, that's one of those that you're like, oh yeah, okay, I see it. Like sometimes you see it when you're watching something, you're like, oh yeah, I guess this was written by a dude. God, yeah. It's just depressing.
But it's just irritating that like every time like the woman has to be like the one making the compromises and being kind and trying to appeal to his rugged, angry male exterior or whatever, and like I don't know, I just find it really irritating. Like there's so many male characters out there who are not nice. They're not good people. No. And they are loved, but you don't really catch that many female characters like that. That
are so, I guess, revered in the same way. No. Oh, no, because I mean, like, even look at these, like, stupid ones that we're talking about. Look at 50 Shades of Grey. Nobody talks about Anastasia. Nobody fucking cares. They're
it's all about
Christian, Christian Grey, blah, 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 and it's like a
same
whole
with
thing.
Twilight. Are you Team Edward or Team Jacob?
Or Team Jacob, and you're like, where's Bella? Well, she's nowhere because she's insipid and pathetic.
Well, because she decided that there's no Team Bella.
Because she's been written that way to be insipid and pitiful, and I I wish that hadn't have been such a big thing. And fuck, which book is it? When does he leave to go to Italy?
New Moon.
He's like, I can't be with you anymore. Thank you. I wish that hadn't have been such a thing of like she's just depressed for like 3 months after.
Oh my god! We had entire blank pages in that book.
I know. And it was very impactful when I read it because I remember being like, oh my god, is she just like not doing anything? She's just sitting around. And even my teenage brain, which at the time was still very much like, I love Twilight, was like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah, like, you should probably do other things. Like, stop not talking to your friends and, like, letting your life fall apart
Yeah,
here.
all that shit where, like, when she, like, wasn't speaking to her friends or doing anything like that, and everybody was like, hey, we, like, haven't seen you or spoken to you basically at all. I was like, oh, don't do that.
No, like, don't be that person.
Don't give up your other relationships for that's, like, a partnership that you're in with someone. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. Never let, like, your other friendships and stuff fall by the wayside when you're in a relationship. It's not healthy. No. And though, whether or not that relationship works out is great or not great, depending on what the situation is, you're really, like, your proper friends are the people who will still be there after. They are the important relationships in your life, especially while you are establishing that partnership with that person.
Yeah, and I really think that should have been the message at that, like, like, I think that's what irritates me with a lot of these, is that, like, you wrote the story and there was a clear opportunity there to like give her independence. So like Bella in Twilight, when he leaves her, she could have made a different choice and she could have just become her own person. Yes. He would have come back anyway.
Oh, 100%.
Like, and you would have been your own person by then. In 50 Shades of Grey, like, he's got so many red flags.
Yeah, when they break up at the end of the first one or whatever.
Yeah, and you're just like, get out of there.
All right,
like,
great,
just
cool.
leave him.
Move on. That was a bad idea.
That was bad.
We all saw that was a bad idea.
Sorry that happened to you. Move on. Like, don't build a whole life with the guy.
No, that's it. Don't.
And like,
God, don't
this idea that like if he's rich and complicated, you can condone his behavior.
I don't like that financials are used as like a de-escalation device.
I hate that so much,
and it happens
everywhere.
It's always like, oh, he's really difficult and everything, but he's a billionaire, and you're like, oh god, how many fucking billionaires are there?
There aren't that many. Like, first of all, and second of all, even if he's 100 millionaire, I can guarantee you he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, and he's probably already got like 55 other women that he's fooling around with anyway. Like, they all act like they're like, oh no, there's ever been anyone until you, and I'm like, that's not true.
Yeah, unless you're like, short and plump and ugly.
I mean, even then, if you have enough money, it does not matter.
We knew someone like that, didn't we? Shout out to you if you're listening to that.
No comment.
Anywho.
Oh boy.
But yeah, all that to say, like you don't have to look very far to see where authors kind of don't do women justice in their stories. Like, and it's actually hard to find a good story with like a good, genuinely strong female protagonist that's not like looking to find her entire identity in a man or who's not described in like a really strange way by a male author, for her sexuality and stuff. I don't want
people to take this and be like, okay, you guys don't want like any romantic elements in a story ever.
No,
That's not true
I love romance.
No,
oh my god, I'm a sucker for it. This is why I rage against it so much, because I'm like, I want a good romance story.
I love it, and I think it's wonderful if it's included as like a portion of someone's story. Yeah. Just not that it becomes the entirety of that story, I think is the difference between those. So where, you don't want your Twilight where it's their whole identity. You want your Little Women where, Jo does get married, but it's not the entirety of her life and identity as a person.
Yeah, and I think this is what makes me so angry about this is like, I love all these stories that we're talking about. Okay, not 50 Shades of Grey, but
it really is an annoying one.
Like I love them, and I read them at a time when I was very, influenced by what I was reading.
Absolutely.
And so I had to really spend many years kind of sifting through like what should be and what is in the media. You know what I mean?
De-influence yourself.
I had to de-influence myself, and I think that's why it makes me so mad is that it's like, why are you women writing these characters and putting them out there for young women who are very impressionable?
Yes.
Don't teach them that. Like, teach them something better so that they don't have to de-influence themselves over the years and go through all these, like, shitty relationships where they're like, this must be how it should be because Twilight. You know what I mean?
It is good that more, like, in more modern times now, I think that
there's a lot more.
Yeah, there's a ton of it, but at least there is a faction of people who have gotten off of like that Twilight kind of bandwagon and aren't doing that.
But that's what I mean. Like, there's a lot more like strong female protagonists.
Thank God. In these genres that we're talking about, in romance, in fantasy, in young adult novels, and all of those sorts of things, there are a lot more of those now that you're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
Okay. Even like in like thrillers and stuff like that, I find I'm seeing a lot more when I'm like reading them. I'm seeing a lot more female characters not wind up with a man at the end. And
or dead.
Okay, yeah, also or dead. Isn't that nice? We don't have to kill them if they don't get married, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like it's not the 1500s anymore. It's not comedy or tragedy. No, but you know what I mean? It's not comedy or tragedy. Yeah. It's not marriage or death. You know what I mean? That's basically what it's been treated as before.
Marriage or insanity. Yes. What is your choice?
What is your choice? Basically, yeah, you have to get married, go crazy, or die. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, those are the only 3 options?
Of course you're gonna pick marriage.
What the fuck else would you pick? Like, oh, I'd really like to go crazy today. Of course I'm gonna aspire
to get married. Like, if my only other 2 options are crazy or death. Oh, we should make a T-shirt with that.
Oh my god! Yes, no, like it would be something like 3, like the 3 options for like female fictional characters, just like marriage, insanity, or death. I want to get that printed.
Let's do it.
We'll open a merch shop, guys, and we'll just add that to the roster. Marriage, insanity, or death. I like it. That's not what we want, and I'm really glad. I'm really glad that we're starting to see. Less and less evolution. Of that. Yeah, like a very big evolution. And I do think that actually, strangely, like something that might be helping with that a little bit is, first of all, obviously the volume of women who are writing, of course, and the types of stories that they're writing, and also a lot more introduction of like queer literature.
Yes.
And, the LGBTQ community being able to actually publish a lot more and feature LGBTQ plus characters in their stories as well, I think is really starting to help that along a little bit, because, you're giving women a voice on their own or with other women or with people who are non-binary or whatever the situation might be. And I think that it's helping expand the scope a little bit for female characters to be like, hey, I'm not going to do any of those 3 things that you just listed. I'm going to do something totally different, you know? And I do think that society itself has shifted a lot that way as well, where it's slowly but surely, not completely, but slowly but surely becoming more accepted for women to either not have children or have them later on in life than they used to. Slowly. I'm saying slowly, speaking as somebody who still gets asked when she's going to have kids. So,
same.
Yeah. You know, so I think that is helping, and it's, again, we're making baby steps, like ant-sized steps, towards women not being vilified for choosing their careers over starting a family. And prioritizing that for either forever, if they're happy with that, or for a portion of their lives until they decide that they are ready for a family as well. And not feeling like when you're like 22, well, you haven't had a baby, what's wrong with that? You know, speaking as somebody who's 33, I've been hearing it for at least 5 or 6 years now.
I've just started hearing it now.
Wow, I mean, lucky you.
Well, I was like able to fend people off because I was like still in school, right? So I was like, no, I'm too busy. Like, I'm studying.
I have school and I'm working.
I know. I finished my MBA a year ago, and now it's kind of like, so what's happening?
Yeah, there's something about for some reason when you're in a relationship with someone for like over like 3 years or so, that's everybody's like, when are you guys gonna have kids? And sometimes I just get mad at people and I'm like, never, and then they get very thrown off.
I like doing that too.
It's fun. It's really nice to do to people sometimes. Make your choices, man. If you want to have kids, have them. If you don't. That's what it is.
That's all there is to it.
Yep, that's what it is. I think that's what everybody should make their decision about. I don't think it should be anyone else's choice. I think it should be your choice as a couple, what you are doing. Mm-hmm. That's it. And that was our extra rant for the end of the episode. Woohoo! Woohoo! But thank you so much for, having stuck with us through Women in Literature Month, because we're always happy to cover a little bit of women's history when we can and when we feel like it.
We do it a lot.
Oh, we do it so much. It's okay. We're going to keep doing it, and I hope you guys are okay with it. So if you are, you can let us know over on Instagram at fullybookedca, or you can check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/bookwaswaybetter. And if you are still here with us at the end of this episode, please feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening, because it really helps us get the show out in front of more people. But until next week, guys, and a new theme, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.